we want safe food, there has to be regulation and there has to be monitoring.
If we can do it for the export market, then why should we not do it for ourselves?
We lack a very strong framework for regulation.
Just to manage recalls from the market, we are now also on a traceability system.
As the sun rises over the skies of Nairobi, hard-working men and women are already in the markets, buying and selling fresh agricultural produce to make a living.
Soko leo iko na mboga mingi sana sababu bei iko chini na mboga ni mingi, kwa hivyo ikiwa mingi lazima mboga iwe nini rahisi.
In Kenya, the horticulture sector is a key export earner alongside tea and coffee. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics report of 2016, the country increased its export earnings by 20% in the first 9 months of the year, crossing the 100 billion shilling mark for the first time in history.
We have gained volumes that are going into the market that are able to meet the food quality standards by engaging our technical team to vet the exporters. When we vet exporters, we take them through a criteria where we are looking at are you able to show the source of your produce? Are you able to show that if you take your produce to the market, if we trace it back using our traceability system?
The sector produces more than 7 million metric tons of fruits and vegetables annually, of which 95% is consumed locally, creating employment for millions of people and providing livelihoods across the country.
Vegetables, fruits and herbs is one of the major contributors in terms of export. Although the flower sector is the largest, but it is the leading in terms of domestic production, what we consume domestically, and also part of it is exported.
Whereas the production and consumption of fruits and vegetables in Kenya has increased gradually over the last few years, food safety and quality of the produce in different value chains remains one of the biggest challenges facing the horticulture industry and making the produce very uncompetitive in the international and local markets.
The problem here is that although the food safety requirements are met with exports, there hasn't been the same approach for domestic consumption.
Handling of export products in terms of hygiene is quite high as compared to our own local market here. Here in our pack house, you can note the difference. We don't process from the floor, we do it on the tables and we follow hygiene rules strictly. And even the hand washes, we have procedures and SOPs and SSOPs. Those are standard operating procedures and sanitary operating procedures in the pack house, of which if they're doing it in the local market and they're putting them on the floor and they don't even have these procedures, the QMSs and all that, you know what I'm talking about, that pertains quality and hygiene in the pack house, then we are quite low in terms of standards for the local market.
At the local level, we've been trying to see why aren't we able to regulate the way we do for the export market. One of the major weaknesses we have is we lack a very strong framework for regulation.
The buyers of these goods also have a humongous role to play in ensuring that their suppliers are able and have the capacity to meet these requirements and passing on that information.
Whereas Kenya has put in stringent measures in complying with international standards and market requirements for fruits, vegetables and herbs right from the farm to fork, several negative food safety reports from the academia and research departments indicate that poor production and handling practices have resulted in contamination of food with harmful bacteria and fungi, leading to several incidents of disease occurrence across the country and an increased number of interceptions in the international markets.
It's the fact that a lot of farmers don't know how to use the correct chemicals in the correct way, which means that sometimes they harvest too early. Every chemical pesticide has what is called a pre-harvest interval, which dictates how much longer you have to wait after you sprayed your crop before you can safely harvest. A lot of farmers don't know that or don't adhere to that. Then there's also a problem with bacterial contamination during transport. If you see in which way and in which kind of vehicles some tomato crates are being transported, and if you also look at the hygiene situation at some of the markets in the cities and on the roadside, then you can imagine how these fruits and vegetables get highly contaminated, both with residue from chemical spraying, but also with bacterial contamination.
Because of the perishability of the fresh produce, we get quite a high level of food loss between the farm and the plate where we need the food. And this is basically because we don't have many companies or farmers that are able to afford cold chain system. And then at the marketplace, we also have issues with the poor distribution of food. You'll find one part of the country is producing food, and the other part of the country does not have sufficient food, and so that then becomes a challenge as a country.
Hii biashara yangu inaafektiwa kwa sababu ya kuchelewa kwa market. Sababu kama ingekuwa barabara nzuri ama zinaweza kufika kwa market in time, unaona inafika ikiwa fresh zaidi. Lakini sasa ikikawia huku inaanza pengine kubadilika rangi, na hiyo sasa inakupotezea pesa.
When produce moves from one county to the next, even through 3 counties, everyone wants to charge some fee. So eventually that makes the produce expensive on the side of the consumer and on the side of the farmer, because the farmer sells at farm gate.
Our members on average will do 2-3 tons of produce to Europe, to Dubai and to other destinations, only for them not to get paid for what they have sweated so hard for, So that's really something that we haven't totally addressed.
For instance, our visit to Kinare Market in Lari constituency, that is approximately 100 kilometers from Nairobi, we find several young men and women cleaning carrots on the open ground, sharing space with grazing animals such as sheep and donkeys, using water from the nearest dam.
Na hii itafika Nairobi leo tu. Hii ndio itauzwa kesho marikiti. Kesho? Asubuhi na mapema.
The ground looks wet. Use dirty water running down on the next user's workspace, causing health risk, bearing the fact that donkey fecal matter is also present.
In terms of microbiological contaminants, we seem to have a problem there. There are a lot of pathogens that we see, like Salmonella, for example, Listeria, and these are basically due to the improper food handling along the supply chain. So yes, for those who are really exporting to the international markets, they understand the stringent requirements and they try to get things right. But those that are selling to the domestic market, it seems like anybody can sell anything in this market as long as there are no controls in terms of quality and in terms of what they really need to present to this market.
Lack of proper traceability principles in this sector is also a challenge. While formal markets such as the supermarkets and green grocers are more organized, most sourcing teams and food handlers at the farm gate lack the requisite food safety knowledge.
If you walk through the Mama Mboga Biosics, what will happen is yes, they are selling sukuma wiki, they are selling tomatoes, they are selling onions, even on the roadside. So very little do they have in mind of a standard. But now that we have the KS 1758 standard, the act is very clear that for any dealer in horticultural crops should be licensed.
It is a common phenomenon in most informal markets in Kenya to find food such as vegetables and fruits being sold on walkways in contact with the dirt and fumes from vehicles driving by. Furthermore, Unscrupulous suppliers and traders also use chemicals to hasten the ripening of fruits like mangoes and bananas.
You know, we do need to register commercial farmers. We need to, rather than everybody being a farmer whenever they feel like it and supplying food products to the population, in the future we will have to differentiate between commercial farmers, even though they're very small, who are going to supply products for sale, and others who just do it for their own consumption.
Actors in the informal markets rarely have formal training in food safety, and few are aware of food safety risks related to the produce.
We do not have enough technical people on ground, and especially because we farm in the remote areas, we have people whom we need to keep on training for us to really be able to produce good produce for export and also for local.
I think a big challenge is the sector is still very informal. Agriculture in general is very informal, and some of the issues are lack of access to information and understanding of where those potentials lie and what are the requirements to meet those standards.
On the international markets, consumers are increasingly concerned about food safety and the environmental dimensions of their food supply chain. As a result, governments, particularly from the EU markets, have imposed new stringent food safety measures regulating the quality of food imports.
Food safety is driven by consumer groups. When Kenya and other countries export to the European Union, for example, the controls are severe to ensure that the food exports meet the requirements.
In the industry of horticulture, more so fruits and vegetables, we want people to be in associations. Why? The associations are going to be key for self-regulation, whereby members of the association will make sure that their association does not taint the market. Because one interception in the market does not belong to that exporter or to that vendor or to that handler. One interception in the market belongs to us as Kenyans. So all we are looking at is like we need to develop people's mind, people's understanding, to be very clear that whatever we are going to do, we want to follow the standard.
In Kenya, the fear is that increasingly stringent food safety, phytosanitary and other regulations within Europe will overwhelm the capacities of developing country suppliers and official agencies to comply.
For export purposes, we have stringent measures that are put by the buyers across the sea, whether it's in Europe or the USA or in Asia. And that means that as we grow for export, we go through a very tough period.
You know, for exports we do that because the customer is demanding. In fact, there's a time people would say it's barrier to trade, we are being harassed. And then I tell them, you see, as a customer, you're paying for these things. Even the ones on the street, you can refuse to buy. After law, you are paying for it. So if you demand that you're going to buy the one that is on the table, you'll find everybody else will put their things on the table.
Kulingana na customer, akikuja akipata chakula iko chini, hataki kununua, anaenda mahali kama Mudhurwa, mahali inauziwa juu. Sasa tungetaka tujengewe juu ama tuwekewe ilami ikue venye ilikuanga kitambo.
However, sector players led by the government of Kenya have taken this challenge as an opportunity to redefine the industry's competitive advantage in several ways.
Our KS 1758 Part 1, Part 2 is also very clear. Why do I say clear? It takes care of the environment. It takes care of the production, the agronomic aspects. It takes care of pest and disease management. It takes care of handling. It also takes care of the relationship between the producer and the buyer, so that the buyer does not go away with the produce and the money. The buyer goes away with the produce and he leaves back the money. The same way, similarly, the producer does not go with the produce and the money. And therefore, under contractual aspect, we are able to have a price that will keep the business going.
In order to bring sanity to this sector, contractual farming is key. Licensing of different value chain players is required. Training, financing, and market access need to be improved.
I think a number of things can be done to be able to improve that. One of it is then to ensure that the food that we produce is safe right from the farm. That good agricultural practices are put in place, that farmers then ensure that whatever they do on their farm ensures that we have quality, safe food.
The structures that has been put in place, a training mechanism and capacity building will have to be put in place so that these farmers are trained, both the producers and the traders who are trading in fresh produce.